So this project though is that people like you see what it was like from the people who've been there. So that's what it's about.
Okay.
Okay. So tell me again, for the purposes of the videotape, your name is?
It's Richard Levering,
And right now you live in?
Greenfield, Indiana.
Tell me the branch of service you were in.
I was in Army, U.S. Army, World War II. Then I was recalled. I got a commission after that. I was a non-com in World War II. And got a commission in the reserve after that, and was recalled as an officer for Korea. I served there, got out again. I enjoyed the service. Then I was recalled for Vietnam, and I could have resigned my commission. Didn't have to go the second time. I didn't want to do that. So I went back in and I stayed for a 20-year career then. So I was in the Army, World War II, and the U.S. Air Force.
Okay. And also present, Mike Green, and my name is Deb Haas, and we'll take it from there. Tell me, what date did you go into the service?
February 1st, 1944.
How did you come to be in the military?
I was one of those in those days. And this is something that people don't relate to very much. Now, well, I'm a high school teacher. Kids don't relate to this one. I wanted to get in the worst way, to be part of that. I did not want that war to end before I got in.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's just the spirit of defending the country and the kids, I guess. And I had been promoted down in the grades in school, at a little school, with no enrichment program, I'm sure. And I was catching things apparently very rapidly and pestering the other kids. So they put me in the middle of the year into the next grade. So I got out of high school when I was just past 17. I just had the 17th birthday, so I was out young. I went with a friend of mine who was older when I was 16 to Cleveland and enlisted. I was in the process of enlisting at that time, and they caught my age. I had a Social Security card. I never thought of that. And so they found I was too young, and he enlisted in the Navy. And I went through many of the battles out there in the Pacific and survived. So I went back home, and the folks said, if you will take one semester of college, we'll sign for you. So I went to college for a semester, and in that time, learned of the Army program, Army Specialized Training Program, ASTP, with a reserve program, ASTRP. They call us ASTRAPs down at the University of Kentucky for the ASTRP, in which they were taking 17-year-olds who had finished high school and had passed a test into college training. You're in the Army, but you're sent to a college. I was sent to the University of Kentucky. And you were to be there till the end of the term in which you turned 18. Then go take basic training, and theory-wise you would return then to become an officer, engineering, medicine. I think there was another branch, law. They put most of us in engineering. Of course, the war did not go too well after that point. That's how I came in February 1st. That's what you asked me. Okay. And we never got back after. I had 2 terms at the University of Kentucky and never returned to college. You know.
Tell me where you went from there. You started to tell the story. Tell me.
Did I tell you more than you wanted to hear?
No, not at all.
Sorry. From there I went to Camp Hood, Texas. It was then. It's Fort Hood now.
I'm going to ask you not to because
Don't
it'll make the sound.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I thought that was just lying.
Technology.
Yeah, Camp Hood. Probably don't want to tap on the table either. I remember arriving there. Oh, you remember this? This is a memory. We arrived there in the middle of the night, about 3 a.m., as I recall, by train from Cleveland, and in August. And the ground was literally covered with crickets. Where we stepped off, it was cricket season down there. They were all over the place, jumping and crawling. It was bothering anybody. We got off the train. They took us over to the mess hall and gave us breakfast, cleared the tables, and we took the age, Army General Class, AGCT, Army General Classification Test, which is a military version of an IQ test. About 4 a.m., after riding the train, they couldn't do that to people these days. And we took it at the same tables where we had breakfast and took the test. And I scored very high on that, which helped me, I think, later on, even under those circumstances, you know. And then, of course, you know, we issued clothing. And they have the old, you've seen it in movies maybe, you put on the boots and then you pick up 2 buckets of sand and they make sure that the boots fit. That's important, I learned in the infantry. And issue all the uniform items to you,
and
process you in.
So, and just kind of walk me through the years of service. And we'll stop
Walk
on
you through. Well, that was basic training at Camp Hood. I had an injury there, apparently, on the infiltration course, where you crawled. There's nothing traumatic. You're pretty near some explosions. I got a little near some of them that they set off there, and they're in low fences. You're crawling around under the barbed wire and all that. You see that, I think.
Right.
Firing machine guns over your head. Excuse me. And I was jarred considerably. I may have had a hernia. They didn't know. Nobody ever caught before I went into service, but it blew something, blew some stuff loose. So I was having a little discomfort, and they checked me and said, you're going to have surgery. So they sent me up to Camp Barkley, Texas, which I think is closed now. It's up at Abilene, and smaller. It was a nice little fort. And I got my surgery. I got a very early spinal. I didn't know what a spinal was. I'd never been sick really in my life. I remember they getting me on the table on my side, and said, pull your knees up and do not move. Of course, I know now why, you know, putting that spinal in there. So I didn't. And had that taken care of. Had a lot of fun in that ward. They called me junior. I was the youngest one in there.
How old were you then?
18. And I was a junior to a New York guy in there who had been a jockey. And he was more fun. He was up and around. He had the smallest robe the Army issued and it dragged the floor, even at that. And he was up, and he would come along and crank everybody's bed up so we're sitting straight up, you know, and then he would just laugh, you know, the whole bunch was sitting up. And just funny things he would say. He had a girlfriend named Spida, and we'd ask him if he had a girl. He had a letter from his girlfriend. Yeah, I had a letter from Spida, he'd say. And he was totally useless to the Army, but he was a lot of fun, you know. So that was, you know, after the surgery, when you're wheeled back in, everybody yells hamburger, fresh meat, things like that, you know. We had a good time there.
Where did you go from there?
From there, I went into medical basic, which I didn't want to take. I wanted to be an infantry troop, you know. But Barkley was medical camp. First 6 weeks were basically infantry. Then they sent me to Camp Housie, which I found later when my wife and I drove past was a chicken farm. And I said to her, I think they found the right use for that place. It was tar paper shacks with a stove in each hut. I think there were 15 of us in the hut. That was all right. We had to keep the stove fed, you know, for heavy weapons training. So I was back into the infantry, but I was trained on the heavy machine gun and the 81 millimeter mortar, which is a big one. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. We had a real good crew through training and got to stick together. We won most of the contests. I'd say most of them speed from the line to wherever it was, 15 yards out, set the mortar up and have it ready to fire, you know. Bunch of kids having a good time. And I'd say that training was good. We knew how to operate that mortar. I never had to do it in combat, but I went overseas as a section chief, mortars, which is 2 squads. Squad is a squad leader, you know, and the section chief gets 2. But, from there, Congress had passed something, don't know what law, probably wasn't law, that you were not to be sent overseas anymore until you were 19 years old. So this meant I stayed in the States longer, which was okay, but they sent us to Fort Meade, Maryland, and apparently didn't know what to do with us, really. But they had us practice digging up mines, and that was kind of touch and go. They had a small charge in there. They said it would blow a finger off or something. I don't know. No one ever went off. We were trained.
I was going to say, hold up your hands. Let's see how.
Yeah. But we spent almost 6 weeks there, out in the field a lot. I don't know if they didn't have the space or they thought we should camp some more or whatever. Uncovering these mines and learning where to put the pin in, you know, to get the mine up. Anticipating we're probably going to be sent to Europe to dig up mines, but we weren't. And I have a memory of a coast-to-coast train ride. They loaded us on a train, never told you anything then. In Maryland, it took us to Fort Lawton, Washington, which is at Seattle. And I was an acting PFC on that trip, in charge of my car. We drew the blinds on the car every town we went through, so that the enemy could not count the troops on the car. I suppose there were spies out there trying to count. I don't know. There were a lot of Army troops on a train. And we went to, I think it was Colorado. I don't remember. A bunch of young kids, you know. We were active, most of us. We didn't get off the train till then. And then they got us off in some little town and said, okay, double time march, which is run, you know. Ran us around several blocks and back on the train. That was the exercise for the trip. And we got to Fort Lawton, and the showers were all cold. We hadn't showered on the train. We were pretty stinky a lot. We were ready for showers, you know. So we took cold showers. What else, you know? Seattle was over across the bay with the lights glimmering, but there were no passes. You couldn't get over there. I don't know if anybody sneaked out. I don't know anyone who did. Some threatened they were going to, but if you missed a boat, you know, you're going to be in big trouble. I didn't chance that one. I'd like to go on into Seattle, but I didn't. Then we went overseas on a ship. And
where did you go?
Hawaii. I'm not sure where we were headed. I know the rest of them went on from there. And we heard they were on Okinawa, which was secured, but still a lot of Japanese on there. They're mopping it up. But it's where that test came in handy, I think, as far as my surviving. The ship had been torpedoed previously, they said, in the war, and it had a list. I forget, they told us how many degrees, 8 or something, but at least you could see it. So the trip was uneventful. There were still a few subs around. I'm sure we didn't see any. But they took us off at Hawaii for ship repair. During that time, they interviewed us. Okay, and I was next morning, 2 mornings later, we were doing landing training while we were there. Guys were drinking pineapple juice and out there rendezvousing, you know, and seasick and disease, and they come in and charge. You know what we were planned for was the invasion of Japan, which never had to be done. I'm sure that was it. But they interviewed us, I guess it was 2 mornings later. There were 2 lists on the bulletin board, and I was on one. And the one list was going to quartermaster school, and the other list was going to clerks and stenographers school. And I was on the clerks and stenographers for clerk. I didn't get any stenography. But I learned to type, which I hadn't done in high school. 40 words a minute to get out of school. You had to hit it, too. If you were getting up to speed that week, you scrubbed garbage cans over the weekend. I mean, one weekend I didn't make it. I was with those old Army brushes and those big garbage cans, scrub them out, you know, clean them out. I made the speed after that. You typed to music. We finally got up to Turkey in a Straw, you know. And then I was assigned to that classification assignment section and became chief of it, where we identified where people were going out to the west. So I was in charge of sending a couple of guys each month to the different islands, Kauai, Maui, to test. They had a real basic test for the Army guys, for the island guys they were bringing in. And I did some basic training there with my experience in basic. I did some of that with the mortars. And I had a very nice girlfriend on Kauai. and she was a buyer for a shoe store, ladies' shoe store line. So she came to Honolulu, good bit to buy shoes. And I went to Kauai. Every time Kauai came up, I sent myself and another guy. What was I going to say now? Anyway, she always wanted me to say I was about 22. I gathered she was older than I was by quite a bit, but that was okay. And my experience was high school dating, little necking, maybe goodnight kiss at the door. So this was purely a platonic relationship, but I enjoyed it, and I'm one of these just one at a time. She's the only girl that I had over there, and so it was really a pretty nice time. I was there for almost 18 months and operated that section. I had good guys that worked there, and was in charge of who went where. They'd always give us a Jeep.
And how old were you when you were in charge of all of this? That's when you're about 19, 20?
Well, I was 19 when I got out. I don't remember when I became section chief. I interviewed guys for a while, but pretty quickly the guy left and they moved me up to the chief. That's how I made staff sergeant before I got out. For one thing, I was the guy they sent out on the porch to line up the island troops when they brought them in. And I could pronounce the names better than anybody else. That's why they get me out there. I could pronounce those Kagawa, well, I don't know. Because we had all kinds of mixes except Japanese, Chinese. We had Japanese, Filipino, Hawaiian, Chinese, you know, and had the Oriental names. And I was pretty good at somehow.
So after those 18 months, then where?
I came back and was discharged. You were discharged on points. You probably know that after World War II. I didn't have too many points with no combat and being over there a short time as I had been. So I was a year after the war. I didn't get out to 46. I have a picture of me too on that. I didn't bring it with me. So yes, I had some. On the VJ Day, I was headed for the shower. Most of us couldn't get off. I was going into Honolulu fast as I could get there. And I had a towel wrapped around me and I was headed for the showers, which were separate buildings, under the stars, by the way. Had a little roof area where you shaved around the outside. The inside where the showers were was open. It was kind of nice. So I was headed down there to get a shower. I had a towel around me and those ankle-high old army boots. And one of the guys had a newspaper. And he said, "Well, I'll get a picture of you, Larry." He said, I said, "Okay, I'll be the young businessman." I rolled up, put it on my arm, going to work, you know, with a towel around me to the shower. And then they held it in front of me, showing, you know, Jap surrender and so forth. And that was August, and I didn't get out till the next August. I was there a year after the war.
But that wasn't enough for you. Then you served in Korea?
Mm-hmm. Not in Korea. I never really got anywhere. I'm not complaining about that, you know. I didn't avoid it, but I didn't get sent to Korea. I was a trainer, really, in ground school. They sent me to Vance, Oklahoma, where I instructed academic subjects. Communication skills was my area, which is English and speech, you know. And that's what my training was in college. Then they sent me down to Bartow, Florida, excuse me, which was a primary flight school with the Piper Cubs, the first stage of flying, and I was a TAC officer. They hated TAC officer.
And why is that?
Very good one. They're the guys who inspect quarters, make sure you're wearing uniform right, assign tour path for any infraction, how many hours you walk on the tour path that weekend. I mentioned inspecting quarters, work on drill ceremonies, make sure the shoes are shined, you know, just bug them. And I was in a section with two who were real good at that, and two of us who were not. You know, I ran things as they had to be run, but I was not out there to cause anybody trouble. You know, the other guy's name was Leg, and they did a skit one class, a graduation skit. This class had a bunch of entertainers in it. They put on shows around the area, musical and recitations. One guy with a guitar did that song, it's real old, about the end of it. He goes through all these horrible things that have happened on his farm, and the end of it is, and now I'm getting dandruff, you know, and he could do that in just great style. So they did this skit, which ended all skits. That's the way the military works, I think. In that skit, the head of our the chief tack officer was named Kampf, K-A-M-P-F, believe it or not. So in the skit, they had a Captain Kant, a Captain Kant who walked around reading Mein Kampf all the time, okay? They had a Lieutenant Levelhead, which was I, and a Lieutenant...
And what was his trick? What did he do all the time?
Who?
Lieutenant Levelhead.
Oh, my trick?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just a good guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, guys that had their belt too long, stick around here, that was okay. They were a good guy. And Lieutenant Foote was leg. It was plain who they were talking about. The other two were just dogs, you know, get down dirty. They just made asses out of them in their skit. So no more skits. No more skits after this. That was okay, you know. So you know, Florida was pretty nice. It was right by Cypress Gardens. We had passes there, and I was married by then. My wife was with me. And
when did you meet your wife? Were you in the service or at home?
Met her after World War II. I'd been back, I think, almost a year at church. And she's a lot younger than I was, and I got a lot of flack for that. I was 21, she was 16. But we've been together ever since, you know.
So then you served during the Korean War, and then you decided you wanted to serve again during Vietnam?
No.
Or were you were still in service?
They recalled me, and I say I could have resigned the commission. By then I was a captain. I really didn't want to give that up. I liked the military. I had any family members that had been in the military. I guess everybody's supposed to hate it, and I didn't, you know. Or I just stayed voluntarily, probably. But they recalled me again, and I decided not to give up the commission. I was teaching school, and that was kind of boring at that time. I find it more interesting now. I was working at the radio station before school and after signing them on, and signing them off. It was a daylight station. When they went off early, I worked till then. If it was later, they had another announcer came in. I like that. I don't have the greatest voice in the world, you know, but I like doing it, and it was more fun to me than teaching at that time. So I just answered the recall.
Where did you go?
And they recalled me. I went, now I can't remember where I went first. I went to Kincheloe Air Force Base to a radar site, which was administered by them, 753rd Radar Squadron, Kincheloe, up there in the Upper Peninsula, which was interesting too. You know, UP with all the snow, but they know how to handle it. It's dry. Then Turkey. They called me one day from Kincheloe. Cavalry. They always ask for volunteers. We have an assignment to Turkey. Would you wish to be a volunteer? And I've often said there was absolutely no space, no time lapsed between the time they said, "Would you like to be a volunteer?" and I said, "No, I'm really not going to volunteer for Turkey." So they called me back, I guess, the next day and said, "Well, you're going as a non-volunteer." Then they go down through the list for who's most eligible. So I didn't volunteer, but I went. And got to take family with me. I was over there in Turkey for 3 years. It's supposed to be 18 months, but taking the family made it 3 years. And then I extended that a bit so I could come back at the end of the school year and get the kids, through that year and into school next year.
What was it like being in the service in Turkey, having your family there with you?
Believe it or not, it enhances family life. You spend so much time together. We had an American recreation area, which is around the bay, right on the coast, Izmir, right past their meat processing plant, which smells to high heaven. I mean, it's something you just have a problem getting through. You can see them when they're killing. You know, they beat them up there and they're hitting them in the head. You know, the cows over here. Then they strew insides and all that stuff out on the sand by the water and let it, what do you say, rot and process, and they make fertilizer out of that. So you're driving between the actual sheds where they're killing them and where they're frying this guts and stuff, and it's everybody laughs about that. You know, hold your breath. We're going past. There's a name for that place. I forget the name of it. Going past the place, this processing place. Then the American Recreation Area had ball fields, and, swimming pool, and picnic space, and plenty of it. You know. So we spent
What
a lot
year
of
was
time there.
this? What years?
Let's see, we were there 65 to 68. And my kids, my boys played Little League baseball, football, and basketball. And I coached some. Not very good at basketball. I got a sergeant there who played basketball, and he helped with that. And we finished pretty well. We all but won the football championship. But we missed on the last game. But the kids had a good time, and the girls, I got 2 girls. And my wife, you know, they mix up Kool-Aid and stuff, and you do all this stuff together. So it really was kind of nice.
Do you miss the service now?
Yeah.
What do you miss about it?
The cooperative spirit. Everybody's in this together. You can trust anybody. I may be wrong on that, but it's always seemed you can trust anybody. You don't worry about your car or where you park it. I just feel at home. My wife says sometimes when you stay on a base, when you get on a base, you seem altogether different. You're very relaxed and all. I said, yeah, I feel like I'm at home. You know, this is where I spent most of my life.
How many years, Tom?
I spent 20. I got out at 20. I probably wouldn't have then, but the kids were about to hit junior high. I thought it was a good time to get out. Also, I was young enough to get a decent job. I figured when I got out, and I did.
Do you think, keeping in mind that this is, you know, if you think of this as an educational tool, this interview, what do you think people realize today, the kinds of things that you all, you know, there's a wealth of experiences that you and other people in the service have had. Do you think people understand what you've lived through?
Some do. Some of the kids do. I think Brokaw's book, I'm not a fan of Brokaw as a newsman. I think his book, Greatest Generation, those who read that got some good idea. I was saying to some kids the other day, see, I was playing in the band, and I think I was an 8th grader. 7th or 8th, at that little school, they let people play in the band before they got to high school. And we went to the train station to see the first guys off in 1940. And there was an old song, "So Long Dear, I'll Be Back in a Year." They were calling them out for a year from the Guard because, you know, Germany and Japan were looking somewhat threatening, evidently. Of course, they didn't get back in a year. A lot of them didn't get back at all, you know. You have to realize some of those things. Also, that nobody knows how long a war will last when it's on. You don't know this is going to end in 1945, and people are saying this could go on for years. If the Japanese, you know, they'll die the last individual who probably would have if it had to invade the homeland. I think kids by and large today, it's too far back. It's just, you know, that's really ancient history. I thought World War I was, you know, in the whatever, prehistoric almost, when I was growing up. And my dad and those who were in that, it was really old. Well, this is farther back than that to these kids.
What should they know about it?
Seem to focus on what you're going to get out of it, the college and stuff like that. What do they know about it?
What should they know about it?
I think that's what I tell them sometimes when they ask me things in class. You'll do the same thing we did. If it ever comes to that, you probably do it better. You know, I have every confidence. But they don't know. But this is a bunch of we weren't born soldiers. You know, we were students in school, as they are. People planning to go to college. I remember when I was coming through high school, the college guys in particular wore the sweaters fold up in front, you know, and everybody sort of dressed the same, Joe College. And girls, I guess, were Bobby socks and saddle shoes and stuff. We were off to college, joined a fraternity and all that. That was what we thought was coming, you know, and not a war, but it was put on us. I'm one of the ones who volunteered. I thought I would have been drafted at some point, but good chance I would have missed that entirely. I think at my age, he was over at 45, I would have been, well, I was 19. Boy, wouldn't have got to me.
You mentioned that you were so gung-ho and you wanted to be a part of it. Why is that?
I love this country. Sorry. And I'd do it again. Today, for that reason. It's meant a lot to me, but I think at that time there was another factor which was very strong. I didn't want to get left out. In high school, the guys who were in service would come home on leave. Of course, all the girls wanted to see them, you know. We were the duds that were still in high school, not old enough to be in there. We never felt that personally, but that's sort of the way it was. Oh, geez, so-and-so's back from the Marines, you know, and that's good. But then I was one that felt like I was one of the leaders of the school in various ways, I guess. I was the drum major of the band, and there was only one in those days. And you had to twirl, not like today. They conduct mostly today. I've got a grandson in the band over at Indiana. You had to throw the baton over the goalpost and throw it up in the air, and they'd tell you the next day how many times you dropped it. If you did, I played football until I had an ankle injury, and I tore all the ligaments. The doctor said it'll take at least 2 years. Be better if you'd broken it. So that knocked me out there. That wasn't very big anyway. But I did that, and I was an all-city swimmer on the swim team. We moved to Akron, a bigger city, and so we had a swim team and all that.
But those girls still wanted those guys home from the service.
Oh, yeah. And it wasn't just the girls thing, that part of it. It's just you felt like you're sort of a nothing. Here you are, a healthy male, but you're still in school. You know, you're just a kid. And plus, I had that thing of being a year younger, from second grade. So when guys went into Boy Scouts, I waited a year. All my classmates, my friends, were a year older. They're all in Scouts. And I'm waiting until I get to be 12. You know? Then I, of course, have a year's less growth. When I did play football and stuff, I was a shrimp the first couple of years, you know. I got some growth the time I was a sophomore, which would have been freshman age normally. So I was that year younger, and I think there was a strong fear in me that as we had some guys leave during the senior year for various programs. They got up to Case, if they had real good grades, they got up to Case Tech in Cleveland, and Western Reserve, I think. I know Case Tech to Cleveland. And I thought, geez, I'm gonna miss this whole thing, you know. And another thing, you don't realize probably if you weren't there, to be a 4F, you know, the classification not physically qualified, boy, that was the end of the world, you know. You did not want to be a 4F, you know, the worst thing you could be, you know. So those are the only ones that were around. That semester of college I took, you know, we had 4Fs and kids like me. We used to, when we were marching at University of Kentucky, you know, call them twos, 20 in the section, heads straight ahead, marching in class, and you'd see some guy over here at the side with a girl or whatever. Somebody in the ranks many times would yell, 4F, real loud, and never changed expression. And at least one time, and I guess the other sections had the same thing, one of the guys came rushing over, he came running over there at us, because can't tell who said it, but he's going to beat up the whole 20 of us, you know. But we do things like that because we figured if they're on campus, it must be a 4F, you know, things like that. We had a little dog too. that hung around. They fed the dog, the mongrel. We named him Fubar. You know the expression snafu? No, it's all fouled up. Of course, the F has another 4 letters in the real one. So we came up with Fubar, which is fouled up beyond all recognition. And we used to laugh a lot of times, you know, the girls would come over. Oh, what a cute dog, you know. What's it? It's Fubar. Oh, Fubar. They're talking about Fubar, you know, the dog. You know, when you're 17, these things are funny. And they're not. You're older, kind of a smarty type thing. But we enjoyed all that. We also had, see, there were older troops there in the ASTP program too, not the reserves. They were studying real hard. We didn't study too hard. We wanted to stay at school. We had a captain there in charge, came out one morning at the top of the steps taking a roll of reports, you know, all present accounted for. And the grades were falling, and he was a little sharp man with a mustache, captain, which is so high to us then, you know, who would ever be a captain? And he said, Ben, I can't make you study, but I can make you wish to hell you had. Which is addressed to us that morning. We were in the dorms there at Kentucky. We had good housing. And what am I going to say about the older guys? Oh, they studied real hard, and we didn't. Of course, we irritated them no end. There were just the 4 sections of us there, about 80. 80 is all we had, the young guys. And they called us the L. I was going to tell you, we had 4 uniforms. You could buy more, we had 4. We kept one with no shoulder patch. You put your current unit shoulder patch, which was ASTP, which is a flaming light of knowledge, I guess, lamp. And your prior unit, we didn't have any at that time, on your right shoulder. Okay. So we kept one uniform each with no patch. And then we were in the basement. Well, 2 rooms were on the first floor, and the rest of us were in the basement in the dorm. We'd go out those doors, those windows. You know, they were French windows, and crack them open, take the street out, and go out and be downtown Lexington, Kentucky. Because Fort Knox was not too far, they came into Lexington, and they never stopped any of us that I heard of. Didn't have a patch to identify. He was ROTC. We'd be out, you know, and come sneaking back in at night. I've done bed check for 2 guys in one night, and I know they made bed check for me when they come through for inspection. You know, we were out on the end, and after they got us, it was a little chancy, and they go into a room, down there, somebody you knew that was out, get up there and climb in his sack, you know, and they open the door and make sure everybody's sleeping there. So we protect each other, you know, and we managed to have a pretty good time down there.
Sounds like.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
That's all right.
I was going to ask you if we just missed, you know, stories like that, things that you remember that we've kind of, that we either skidded by, or if there's something we've missed about your time in the service.
I'll tell you a little vignette, sort of, that I just thought of in the barracks. By the way, all the barracks always smelled new. Command Hood, every place I was, except the housing with those shacks. And they were all right. Everything smelled new those days, because they were building, you know, Hood was building all the time. Geez, we had, I don't know how many troops were on that place. It was a horseshoe type thing, one training company after another.
What year would that have been?
That would have been 44. But in those barracks, okay, when you're coming down from upstairs or other strategic locations, there would be posters about that size, I remember, of the cutest girl you can imagine. Not a pinup type, just her face, you know, really cute. And it would say at the bottom, this is VD, you know, she may look clean, but, you know, everything did, you know, if she's that cute, I'm sure. And then after Kentucky, those were all over. You know, cute gals, you know. She may look clean, but yeah. Then horrors today. At the sign-out book, when you get to the regular post, if the sign-out book, if you sign out and pass, there's also a box of condoms, you know. was free of charge. And they had those pro stations all over the towns, prophylaxis. I never participated in that, but they encouraged you all the time. If you had sex, be sure to go into one of those and let them give you treatment, whatever it was, for VD. And we did have guys out for VD. When I was at Benjamin Harrison, across SDM, I had little experience, so I was in acting, whatever. Then I had an armband, and I marched the guys around as I was processing through. I was brand new there, and I said to one of the guys one time, here went a bunch past, in uniform, a pretty good sized group. And the guy said, there goes Clap Company. And I said, what? He says, that's Clap Company. The guys all had the clap, big formation. Oh, you know, it's a wonder. Sometimes you think we had enough healthy troops to fight, really, because that's one of the negative sides of it. These kept showing up. You don't want to get in that business, you know.
You don't want to be in that company.
Nope.
No. I think we're about through, like I said, unless there's anything else you care to
I
share.
kind of dread this televised thing. I hope then I got going. I hope I didn't talk too much here, that's all.
Not at all. Not at all. No, we want to hear everything.
I thought if you want some of those little stories, you know, I can tell you a couple of those too. And that's fine. Sure. If you're through, I'd about run the gamut, I think.
Anything you would say to, let's say, students watching this about, you know, obviously you were a little emotional there when you talk about how much you love this country. Do you think that we've done a good job, that people appreciate the job that you have done for the country?
Oh yeah, I don't feel unappreciated at all. I think there's full appreciation for what we did. I think that I sense, just my viewpoint, I'm not alone, some lack of understanding for what is required to maintain this, and that it might have to be done again. I think there's an awful philosophy that the United States is going to be here. This is set in concrete, and it isn't at all. You know, I think that's the lack.
So people need to understand that there's still work to be done to continue what this country is about?
Yeah, I think you have to work at freedom all the time and be ready to safeguard it at, you know, whatever price. We're going to lose some people in this war on terrorism. Of course, we've lost 3,000 with the one attack, which seems to be forgotten about. Some of these people want to make out that's really our fault, the way we treat the rest of the world or something, so that we brought it on. Hey, they killed 3,000 of our people. That's time to get with it and stop that stuff, you know. Or we could easily not be here, I think, all be slaves. I don't need to exaggerate it, but you have to be aware there are people who would like to take over the world, including us, and they're not going to realize that the United States is always to be there. Don't touch them, you know. And if it was the young people, I'd say you recognize that if you can, and hope it never happens, but be ready to give what you have to give. And with all that, you know, all the fun we have and had, and that kind of thing, it's just Americans being together. But we knew what could happen to us. There's no question about that. We sensed we were going to be the invasion force, without a doubt. That's why they were concentrating so many in the Pacific. And casualties, as you know, were estimated at least 500,000. Well, I think they said minimum, bare minimum, 250,000 U.S., probably more like 500,000 and possibly more. So that that's what they're facing, I think. And, you know, people will do it, but they need to be aware. I think they could think they could head off some catastrophe, some catastrophic thing, a Holocaust type war, by being alert and stamping on these things when they come up. If it takes going in there and getting Saddam, for example, the U.S. has never made a preemptive strike, but maybe this is the time we need to do it. Now, I'm not saying I'm all for it, go get him, you know, but he seems to be at the source of a lot. And all I'm saying is we ought to be united in that Congress and everywhere to base what we do on the facts as best we can get them, and no other considerations. And if the facts say we need to get him out, he's not going to leave on his own. And let's go and be ready and get it done. Now, long answer. I don't talk this much usually.
I don't mind a bit.
I don't know if it's you two or what.
Well, great.
You're obviously an excellent interviewer.
I'm glad we got that out.
Turn me on.
Thank you.
Turn me on, and here we go.
All right. Well, I think we're through.
Okay.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Judge, thank you. And I hope I didn't destroy your time schedule.
You